Hey Life Group leaders, Pastor Adam here. I hope you're doing well today as this video finds you. It's been a fun past several weeks as we've been studying through the life of Joseph, and there's so much there that I'm glad that we took the time to spend several weeks covering it. There's so much that we can learn, so many comparisons with Joseph, his life compared to the life of Christ, different things that we see there. But we wrap it up this Sunday. And so I want to talk about a few things that the book kind of pulls out, and then also want to talk about some overall things from the life of Joseph that I've talked about before that I think are just super important. But the book kind of breaks this down in three sections, in verses 15 through 18, 19 through 21, and then 22 through the end of the book. And the first thing that we see in verses 15 through 18 is that believers can accept forgiveness from others, and sometimes that's hard. And our book talks about that. One of the things that really stuck out to me is looking all the way back to when the brothers threw Joseph in the pit. They hated their brother, they sold him into slavery, and now we're at a place where they are having trouble believing that forgiveness is really going to stick, that it's really going to happen. So Joseph obviously rose to power. We read before that Joseph was able to interpret through God's power Pharaoh's dream, and then so he's in power. He sees his brothers. They reunite. Everything is great. But then we get to a place in Genesis chapter 50 where it says that when Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said to one another, "If Joseph is holding a grudge against us, he will certainly repay us for all the suffering that we caused him." So things had gotten better. But what I want you to think about now is the effects of sin. Sin has a ripple effect. It has consequences that we always tend to underestimate. And so the sin of Joseph's brothers from all the way back to that time reared its ugly head. The consequences of that sin reared its ugly head and caused them to doubt that Joseph was really going to forgive them. Because forgiveness can be hard to grant, as I'm sure you've experienced in life. It can also be hard to receive. So they said, what if Joseph really isn't forgiving? What if he was just doing that for Dad? What if he comes after us? And so they go, they say to this Joseph, "Please forgive your brothers' transgression and their sin, the suffering they caused you." Joseph wept when their message came to him. His brothers also came to him, bowed down before him, and said, "We are your slaves." And Joseph said, "Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You planned evil against me, but God planned it for good to bring about the present result, the survival of many people." And what we learn from verses 19 through 21 is that truth wins and that God's plan prevails. Behind the scenes, I'm going to talk more about that in a couple minutes, but behind the scenes, God is at work. When is what before our eyes, when it looks hopeless, when it looks like it doesn't make sense, when we can't explain it through earthly logic and reason, God is at work. And at the end of the day, truth wins and God's plan will prevail. Joseph said, "You meant it for evil, but God meant that for good." Now, can we unwrap that and fully understand it in our earthly minds? No, we can't. But somehow, in a way that only God can do, God takes bad things and can make them used to achieve His purposes and ultimately to glorify Himself. Another thing that we'll see in verses 22 through 26, as the book closes, we see that Joseph lived to be 110. It says that he saw Ephraim's sons to the third generation, to the sons of Manasseh's son. And so Joseph left a legacy. And I think this is really something that you can hone in on with your group about Joseph's legacy and what he left behind. Because at the end of the day, we're going to lose things. We're not going to be remembered in 100, 200 years from now. But what is going to be left behind is the legacy, and especially the legacy of faith that we leave to other people. And so Joseph left a legacy. People were able to remember Joseph, and he lived a life that was worthy of remembering. So have your people think about when I come to the end of my days and I'm starting to look back, what is my legacy going to be? Because at the end of the day, that's what we're going to leave behind. So there are kind of three sections I think that you could break that in. The book brings out some good things, but I think as you close the book, you want to kind of put a bow on it. And I'm sure you've had some people that are in and out. Big picture for this lesson is that the brothers' sin, the consequences followed them. And that's the thing the enemy does. When the enemy tempts you to do something like that, the enemy doesn't explain to you the guilt, the feelings, all the different consequences that are going to come into play. The enemy just makes it seem like this is the thing that you ought to do. And then when you do that, when you commit that sin, then the enemy automatically comes against you, and he's the accuser of you, and the consequences will stick. Something to think about with this whole story of the life of Joseph is what the big picture looks like. So as you close this up, you might take an opportunity to talk about some things that some people may have missed. One of the things that always sticks out to me when I read these chapters in Genesis is about how Joseph's life, it seems like there's always some sort of change that's happening. There's a transition that seems to be always going on. And our life is like that. You know, as we tape this, we're on the end of a school year. We're in spring, but we're going into summer as far as especially younger families with school-age kids goes. So there's a transition that happens. Life is full of those. You grow up, you're a kid, you start driving, you go to college, you get married, you have kids, you work, life things happen along the way. You retire one day. So there's these transitions in life that we're going to experience. And I think what we can learn from the life of Joseph is that there are opportunities in those transitions. One of the hard things with change is that there's this unfamiliar stuff that starts creeping in, and we don't know what to do about it. And that in between of when the old is gone and the new's not here yet, that's where things can get muddy and gray, and it's kind of stressful for us. But I think there's some things that we can learn about transitions in the life of Joseph. The first is that transitions offer adversity. They offer adversity. We see this obviously from Joseph. He's thrown in a pit, sold into slavery, accused of doing something that he doesn't do, and then he's put into jail. So you could say that adversity was pretty normal to Joseph. For us to bring it into today, to apply it to your group, we know that it's not something that we really ask for. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, God, I really want you to help me grow in my ability to overcome adversity. We just don't pray that. But it's something that's going to happen. And so the only way that we're going to make it through the adversity well is to be close with God, united with God in the scriptures, in community at church, with a strong prayer life. Adversity is going to happen, and the way that you respond to adversity is going to determine your next steps, because adversity is coming. You're either walking towards it or you're coming out of it, and so we have to make a decision on how we're going to respond to the adversity. And what we learn from Joseph is that he leaned on God. So we must lean on God. The phrase that you see over and over again in the life of Joseph, it says that God was with him. And when they came to Joseph, and he went to interpret the dream for Pharaoh, Joseph said, you have to understand, it's not me that can interpret the dream. It's the power of God that will interpret the dream. So God was with him. So the way that we're going to be able to overcome adversity is to be united with God, for God to be with us. So transitions offer adversity. They also offer maturity. And every season and everything that Joseph went through, he was learning. So when he was in the pit, he learned. When he was sold into slavery, he learned. And when he was put in jail, in prison for something that he didn't do, he learned. What did he do? He did the next thing that he knew to do. God had given him a gift. And in that circumstance, in jail, what did he do? He used it, okay, he interpreted dreams of the baker and the cupbearer. He was doing the next thing that he knew to do, to use the gift that God had given him. And so God has given you an opportunity to mature. You might be in a season of life And your group members may be in a season of life where they feel like they're waiting, where they don't know what's coming, when they feel like things are just going wrong and they're in this kind of pattern of just spinning around. God is not unaware of your situation. But what can we do? We cling close to God, believing in His promises, knowing that He is faithful, and use the gifts that He's given us to do. And at the right time, in God's timing, you will enter into a new season. But while you're going through that transition, He offers you an opportunity to mature. So what gift has God given you? This is an opportunity to ask people in your life group. Maybe God hasn't given you the ability to interpret dreams, but what has He given you a gift? What talent has He given you to do? And He's given you that thing to use, whether it's a spiritual gift or a natural gift. He's given you a thing to do, to use, to glorify Him for His kingdom. So how can you leverage that? How can you use that in the local church? How can you use that for the kingdom? So transitions offer you an opportunity to mature. They also offer you new beginnings. Sometimes when you get to the end of that season, you're ready for something new to start. There's a lot of kids right now that are happy that their school year is ending and they're going to have a new school year next year. They're looking forward to a new teacher, to a new set of kids. I wouldn't squash your kids' excitement, but we know as adults that sometimes the next class, the next teacher, and the next group of people that you're surrounded with aren't any better, could even be worse than what you had the year before. But ignorance is bliss, and so when we're coming into something new, we're excited about that. But transitions offer new beginnings. I'm sure we've all had those times when we were excited to start something new. But take advantage of that. Sometimes it just feels like in life that we just kind of get bogged down and we just feel kind of worn down. We feel tired. But when God gives you that new opportunity, whatever that is, maybe it's a new job, maybe you move to a new place, whatever that might look like, use that to your advantage. Use that for a fresh start. Use that to glorify God and point people to His purposes for His glory. And then last but certainly not least, transitions offer gospel opportunities. What Joseph told his brothers, that you meant this for evil, but God meant it for good. And so what we learn from that is that they offer gospel opportunities. Now, what do I mean by that? Behind the scenes, God was working out a bigger story than any of us could have ever imagined. In the midst of all of Joseph's trials, he didn't understand what was going on, why that was going on. When you look in the rearview mirror, which we have the luxury of doing, having the Bible, God worked everything out according to His plan to save His people, that His chosen people could be saved. All these transitions led to a gospel opportunity. It was a gospel opportunity to forgive the brothers, a gospel opportunity for Joseph to tell Pharaoh, hey, here's what this dream means. You need to be storing up for the years of famine from the years of good. They offer gospel opportunities. So what is your change offering you to do? What gospel opportunity has God given you? He's placed you in that new class, young people. He's placed you in that new job, adult. He's placed you in a new neighborhood or with a new neighbor to advance the kingdom and to advance the gospel for His glory. So take advantage of that transition. So 4 things just to think through and for your people to think through from the life of Joseph. 1, expect adversity. It's coming. Get ready to it. Cling closely to God, but use adversity to advance your maturity. Use it as an opportunity to grow closer to God. It's through those tough days and those tough times, when the sickness comes, when the poverty comes, when things don't go well, it's amazing how our prayer life grows exponentially. It's amazing how close we cling to God. So use it to advance maturity and allow that to lead to a new beginning. And remember that new beginnings bring gospel opportunities. So as we close the book of Genesis, and we'll soon start the book of Acts, we don't need to forget what we've learned. Even before our several week series on Joseph, what have we learned through the Old Testament? What we learned in our study of Genesis is that God's people often fail. They often make poor choices. People that we call heroes of the faith did some really dumb things. and they often forgot about God, even when He did miraculous things. And what we can learn is that we need to remember who God is and what He has done. Remember that He is faithful when we're faithless. And remember that we can follow Him and trust Him no matter what. And we need to use the things that He's given us in the situations that He's put us in to bring Him glory and advance the gospel. So I hope that this is helpful to your lesson. If you ever have a problem with a passage that you're working on, something doesn't make sense, please give me a call, shoot me a text, shoot me an email. That would be my favorite conversation of the day, is to walk through that with you. I may not have the answers for you, but we can work together to get it. So excited as we close Genesis. God has taught us so much through this book, and also excited to start in Acts, in life groups, as we're also going through Acts with Pastor Matt and the sermon series. So again, if I can help you with any way, let me know. I'm praying for you. God bless, and have a great day.